Hey everyone, Brian Zane here, and I tell you what, I am really excited for this weekend in professional wrestling. Obviously, this Saturday, AEW is hosting their Full Gear pay-per-view event at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles. It's a great card on paper, and I can't wait to give you my picks for that show in this video. But before that happens, one day earlier, several hours to the north in San Francisco, will be another big happening in wrestling. I'm talking about the long-awaited in-ring return of Chris Hero. If you know pro wrestling today, then you should know who Chris Hero is. I believe he is one of the most innovative and most influential figures in wrestling in this generation. And after 3.5 years of no in-ring activity, he is coming back to the ring. He's going to be wrestling his longtime on-again, off-again rival in Timothy Thatcher. It's happening at West Coast Pro Wrestling's Whiplash event at the United Irish Cultural Center Friday night in San Francisco. I cannot wait to be there. I'm going to be there with my crew. We are going to be filming a documentary on Chris Hero's big return. I'm so excited for this. Chris Hero is a good friend of mine, and I'm so happy, along with many of his other fans. It's going to be a very special night, and if you can't be there in San Francisco to watch it live, I hope you can check it out on YouTube on Friday night. But of course, there's the big AEW show the following night in Los Angeles. Full Gear, my predictions forthcoming. A lot of question marks swirling around this event storyline-wise, especially as it relates to the world champion, MJF. He's going to be in a bit of a bind defending the ROH World Tag Team titles against the Guns. And I'm recording this video before Rampage, so we don't have an official word on who MJF is going to actually pick for his partner officially. But based on what the story is telling us, all signs point to Samoa Joe, the man who is specifically gunning for MJF as world champion. It's why he retired, or why he vacated, I should say, the ROH TV Championship. It's not retired. He just vacated it, but keep vacant out of the discussion for right now. Anyway, as far as this match goes, you know, I predicted the last time MJF had to defend the tag titles by himself that he would lose them. And I find it, you know, I find myself in a similar position with this month's show because, oh, they could continue the angle where he and Adam Cole are, you know, the tag team champions and MJF's got to fight for him and everything. But I feel it's kind of a gradual chipping away process where, you know, last month, Wrestle Dream, he was still relatively strong, but every week, more marauders at the gates, more people coming for him for his championships, and it's all kind of starting to accumulate, it seems. The collective stress and anxiety and the pressure. And so what I think is going to happen here is that Samoa Joe will kind of like play with his food a little bit in this one. He'll be the partner, and he might get a couple of shots in and take some and give some offense to the Guns. But I think mostly he's doing it to mess with Max. And so I think he's there, you know, and he's doing it to get what he wants. He wants that AEW World Title shot in the future. So I believe Joe will ultimately not really be a helpful hand in this, and will ultimately cost MJF and by proxy Adam Cole the ROH tag titles to the Guns. That will continue Bullet Club Gold's ascension. Now, as to how I think it's going to all tie together to the MJF Jay White match later on, stay tuned. TBS Championship match, Chris Statlander will defend against not only Julia Hart, but also Sky Blue, who was officially became the third entrant as a result of her match on Dynamite Wednesday. This is a very interesting combination, very interesting dynamic, because as we all know, it was Julia Hart who sprayed the black mist in Sky Blue's face, and you can see that had taken effect on her personality over the last several weeks. You know, we've seen how it affects her makeup at the very least, and we've seen this kind of like, will she or won't she attack with Julia Hart in the past, and like what's going to go on with them. I think with this matchup, we're going to see a culmination of this storyline. It's either going to result in Sky Blue ultimately rejecting Julia Hart or embracing it and joining her group. I wouldn't even be surprised if Willow got involved, because as we saw earlier, she also has gotten the black mist. And so maybe this is kind of Julia Hart's recruiting some kind of like coven of witches. I don't know, something to tie into the House of Black mythology. But I believe this is going to be a show where we see that kind of something develop there with the relationship with Julia and Sky Blue and or Willow. And so my pick here is that Julia is going to win, and her very pretty moonsault will win the day for her, and she'll be the new TBS champion. There's a trios match as Sting, Darby Allin, and the man formerly known as Edge in Adam Copeland takes on Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. My short answer for this one is I really don't see a scenario where a team featuring the hot new star of the day, Adam Copeland, loses here. You know, that's what you do with new stars you bring in or new hot names from other companies. You bring them in, they have a few wins early on at the very least, just to establish them as, you know, getting over and everything. And I don't think it's going to be any different this time around. I mean, I've heard people kind of speculate, oh, wouldn't it be this and that if Copeland betrayed Sting, because that's the fun thing to do historically, and join up with Christian Cage. And I can kind of see that happening, but I don't know. I think that you don't want to turn Edge heel right away. I think the last time he was a heel, that did not go over well. So if you're going to be a heel Edge in this new playground of sorts, like, or new heel Adam Copeland, there's got to be something. There's got to be some meat on that bone. Just joining up with Christian, that doesn't seem like the thing to do to me for him at this point. So I think that we're going to stay the course right now, but I do believe that Sting, Darby, and Copeland will win. Tejas death match as Hangman Page takes on Swerve Strickland. This match I'm very excited for, much in the same sense that I was excited about WrestleDream last month. And that match absolutely tore the house down. You see, I saw it live, I watched it back on the feed, and both versions were excellent and clearly matched the night contender. And so I definitely think there's a lot of pressure and expectation on this match to equally deliver. And I think that it being this Texas deathmatch style where now the doors are open to allow for weapons and blood and what have you, I think that's going to put this match to a whole other level. And I think we might see some painful looking things here. I don't know why I keep going back to this moment when it was like Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy many years ago, and they were in the Hell in a Cell feud, and Orton took the screwdriver and like twisted the hole in Jeff Hardy's ear. Like, we're not going to get that, I don't think, but I think we will get some messed up stuff, because we've already gotten to the point of breaking and entering, home invasion, and stuff like we saw with Swerve and Nana this month. And so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we saw like Hangman really try and get sadistic to get back at Swerve, or for Swerve to double down on that and be even more of this evil, diabolical person. And I think that this angle has really done a good job for both men's characters in the last couple of months. I think it's done a great job in rebuilding the stock for both men, because I think a lot of people kind of wrote off Swerve several months ago, but I think especially in the latter half of this year, he's really come into his own. And I feel with Hangman Page, after he lost the world title, he was derailed for a very long time. And finally, he's in a storyline where I feel he can really sink his teeth into and reestablish himself as an upper tier guy. As far as who I think is going to win this one, my gut says Hangman, simply because it was Swerve who won last week, or last month, I should say, at WrestleDream. But I don't know. I think, again, it could really go to either man at this point. I think where last month, WrestleDream, I thought firmly Swerve should win this one. This is the match for him to win. I think now I'm less in that camp, and I think, you know, maybe Hangman's turn now. Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, the Golden Jets, take on the Young Bucks in what's being billed as this kind of friendly exhibition match, since 3 of the 4 competitors are all on the same team. But once again, there is tension within the Elite. We saw what happened on Dynamite this past week, and there was a bit of a scuffle breaking out with the Bucks and Omega and Jericho. There were some very thinly veiled allusions to the Brawlout kerfuffle from last year, I think, peppered in that segment. Take that for what you will. But either way, you know, there's more tension and, oh, there's infighting. And I get it. The Bucks are very justified in this because, you know, it wasn't that long ago that Jericho and MJF beat Daddy Buck into a bloody pulp in the build for their tag title match. So I get why the Young Bucks are still a little heated at Chris Jericho in a kayfabe sense. So I think this is going to be a fine match. As far as who I think will win, I believe this is going to be a match for Jericho and Omega to win. I think they're going to be the ones on top of this one, and I believe that will, you know, set more things in motion with the Bucks and Omega in their relationship. I don't think it's going to be Omega getting the pin, though. I think it's going to be Jericho pinning, you know, Matt or Nick and going from there. But that's just kind of my, like, coin flip. I think you could really go either way, but I'm going to lean more toward Golden Jets in this one. In the International Championship match, Orange Cassidy will once again lose to Jon Moxley, and the timeline will finally be restored. I don't think there's been anything more indicative of, like, Tony Khan's insistence on this is how I've planned it, this is how it's going to go, than how we've seen the International Championship picture booked since Jon Moxley won it the last show at All Out, where he, you know, beat Orange Cassidy to death. It seemed like this big moment, and then Moxley gets hurt, gets his bell rung by Rey Fenix, and then it just, you know, the belt hot potatoes around for a bit, back to Cassidy, and we've got this match with Moxley again. And you know what? I'd love to see Orange Cassidy get the win back, but I just don't see it happening. And I think that Moxley, like I said, he's going to win the belt back, and they're going to do whatever he was going to do as international champion, and that's going to be that. For the AEW Women's Championship, Hikaru Shida will defend against timeless Toni Storm. A lot of interesting things at play with this match. First of all, I love Toni Storm's gimmick. I love how they have really just allowed her to lean in to the timeless stuff. I love that whenever she's talking or whenever we're going into her world, things turn black and white and grainy, as we saw in the bit this week with Mariah May going into the room, and when Luther opens the door, it turns black and white. When he closes it, it goes full color again. Those little details, and just her profile picture also being black and white, I think those little details are so fun, and nobody else is doing that right now. So kudos to Toni Storm for really finding a character that breaks her out from this other just sea of leather, straps, rivets, punk rock girl I see in so many other aspects in women's wrestling. Then you have Shida, who won the women's championship from Saraya, and honestly makes you wonder what the point of Saraya's reign as champion was even for, but that's a whole other discussion. Shida has, she's been a great champion at the times she's held it. You'd like to see her get another kind of long, healthy reign like she did with her first one. And, I don't know if Toni Storm needs a championship. I don't think this gimmick needs one necessarily, but I would not be surprised if they gave her this championship, almost kind of like a make good when she was like the interim for so long while Thunder Rosa was injured. Give her a real proper, women's championship run, and you've got, the fact that, oh, she's this new novelty because of the gimmick, and oh, now we're adding this wrinkle with Mariah May in kind of this All About Eve situation where she's a really big fan of Toni Storm and wants to help her out somehow. So wouldn't be surprised if that was a catalyst to that storyline, or keep going and Toni Storm wins the championship and they develop a feud from there. As for Mariah May, I know she was a recent signing, a recent addition to AEW. I really don't know anything about her work in Japan. I can't speak on that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do. AEW tag titles will be determined in a four-way match on this show. You're going to have Big Bill and Ricky Starks defending against LFI, FTR, and the team of Malachi Black and Brody King. First of all, very happy to see Brody back in action. He's been out for a long time with that broken hand, so I'm going to be excited to see him back in the ring. Also, just four ways, tag four ways especially, so hard to call, so hard to predict where you want to go with this. Even them putting the belts on Starks and Big Bill in the first place, I thought was a bit of like, oh, okay, let's see what they do with this. As far as who I think is going to win, there's a lot of different ways you could play it. You could have the champs retain, you could have FTR win it back. I'd like to see House of Black win the belts, then you can kind of have like this belt power consolidation if my prediction of Julia Hart winning the TBS title holds true. So you can see that happening. I don't see LFI winning it, honestly, but I think that it's going to be an action-packed affair. It's going to be a lot of crazy stuff happening in this matchup here. My gut tells me that in four ways like this, the champ usually retains, and so I'm not going to change my pick on that. I think that it will be Big Bill and Ricky Starks retaining. Now, before I get into the AEW World Title business, there is some intrigue to discuss. You might have seen on X a couple of days ago that Tony Khan posted. It's taken me a long time to get used to the new verbiage, folks. Anyway, Tony Khan tweeted out that they have come to terms with one of the world's best wrestlers, and he says a pro who is known and respected by virtually every AEW fan, and that person is going to sign their contract in LA at Full Gear. And of course, lots of speculation as to who this person could be. A lot of the smart money, a lot of the top picks for everyone's predictions fall somewhere between Mercedes Moné and Will Ospreay. Now, Moné, I think, is a good possibility for this showing, but Tony Khan did say in his tweet it was somebody who was known and respected by every AEW fan. So just looking at the online discourse, I'm going to say probably not Mercedes Moné. As for Will Ospreay, I was under the impression he was still under contract with New Japan until next year, so I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. There are a few other names. I saw some people kind of speculate, oh, it could be CM Punk re-signing. I don't know if that's going to happen. If that does happen, it's going to be the result of the biggest work of all time. We all got swerved. I'm going to go kind of with a dark horse pick here, playing off on what I said at the top of this video. What if it's Chris Hero? He is one of the world's best wrestlers. He is known and respected by virtually every AEW fan, I would argue. And he's already there as a producer, and he's already making his in-ring comeback the night before. So I really wouldn't be surprised if he was the guy coming out. So here's my thing. If it's not Mercedes Moné, and if it's not Will Ospreay, and if it's not Chris Hero, then I think Tony Khan better hope he's got another Christian Cage on his hands, where the announcement's someone like, oh, wasn't really expecting that, but then they become this kind of like late bloomer kind of thing where, oh, the long-term payoff is tremendous and we love it. So I hope it's that at least, if it's not one of those other three. But those are just my kind of guesses as to who it might be. Who do you think it's going to be? Let me know in the comments. Then there's that AEW World Championship match, MJF pulling double duty against Bullet Club Gold's Jay White. I've really been liking, the whole idea of MJF fighting off all these different, challengers for his belt. I've been loving that. Not just Jay White, not just Samoa Joe. Wardlow's also in the running based on the hype packages as well. So I kind of like this whole like MJF against the world sort of thing, especially as Adam Cole is out with an injury and they're building this whole thing up. He's getting increasingly isolated. The Acclaimed and Billy Gunn all got beat up as well. So it's this issue of, oh man, MJF's got no more friends. How's he gonna survive against Jay White? And I believe he is going to retain the belt. And here's why. Because Samoa Joe is going to agree to be MJF's partner in the ROH tag title match on the condition that he gets a future shot at the title. And so I think he would much rather fight MJF again, because that's what they've been building toward for a long time. I think Samoa Joe versus MJF's a better story at this point for the title than Samoa Joe versus Jay White. Like if Jay White beats MJF, I don't think it's going to happen. So my prediction is Joe is going to help MJF win the belt. He's going to protect his investment. So I think we're going to get some more of that uneasy alliance perhaps with Joe and MJF for a while. And MJF's going to be constantly looking over his shoulder, because not only that, but there's also the devil. More on that later. But my short answer for this is I think MJF is going to retain with some unlikely help from Samoa Joe. Now, as I was mentioning a second ago about the devil, we've seen a lot of build with that over the last several weeks. We've seen the group beatdowns, some with the devil, some without. We've seen the devil pop up on screen occasionally. I'm really hopeful that maybe we don't get like a resolution to this, but we get some big progression. We get some new big hint or some involvement from the devil where we get more insight into what's going on here. And I don't know if it means we're going to unmask him here at this show, but I think that doing an unmasking of the devil at this show would be a great, like, bam moment to end the event before before it goes black. I think that'd be kind of a cool way. I mean, as far as who it's going to be, I still have no idea. There's so many different ways it can go. Some people are predicting that this whole Adam Cole injury thing is a work and that it could be him under the mask all along. That's something that I was kind of thinking about early on in the Devil storyline as well. Some people are thinking CM Punk, and he certainly is alluding to that on Instagram to stir the pot. It used to be, it used to be that Finn Balor was the answer to everything when I was observing the wrestling landscape. Now CM Punk is the answer to everything. Funny how that works out. But anyway, as far, I really hope that we do get some progression on the Devil storyline here. If we don't get a resolution or an unmasking, I don't think it'll be the worst thing in the world, but I'd like to see something move along with it. But those are just my picks, folks. What do you think's going to happen at Full Gear this weekend? I want to hear all about it in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching these predictions, folks. I will see you next week with my Full Gear review. It's going to be a busy weekend, like I said. I'm going to be in San Francisco for West Coast Pro Wrestling to watch Chris Hero's in-ring return. Saturday on the 18th, Full Gear. I'm not going to be watching that live because POW Pro Wrestling is that night here in Eugene, and I will definitely be a part of that. So you can expect my Full Gear review early next week for sure. But until then, folks, be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.